Lead us off, Fred. Hallelujah.
Toda Yahweh.
7 years of trumpet lessons, and that's about all I've got left.
First of all, Fred, we want to thank you for opening up your house to us. It's such a blessing. We feel so honored, and we're just so thankful for all you do.
Well, my pleasure.
You and Rhonda.
You're a blessing to us.
No. Eric?
Okay, here's part
Continue.
2 on the Shabbat of the week of Pesach, according to the, you might say, the Hillel calendar of the year 2020. We started talking in Isaiah 25:1. Let me just say those same words again. Yahweh Elohi Atah, Aromeka Oda Semka Ki Ashita Fele Etzot Marochek Amona. Amen. Yahweh, you are my Elohim. I will exalt you. I will give thanks to your name, for you have done wondrously. Your plans from the distant past were kept with firm faithfulness. That's the Stone's Tanakh translation.
Hallelujah.
So we ended up the last video a few minutes ago with Isaiah 29, verse 9. Back up one verse, and it says, Yahweh will do something. It says, so will be the multitude of all the nations that muster themselves against Mount Zion. So what we're saying here is that though the nations, though the wise men, the leaders, like Belteshazzar, have these great plans of how to profane Yahweh's word as if he was impotent, incompetent, unable to intervene because he's just some mythical, hypothetical, phantom God of the Jews, that he has actually held his face back and his arm restrained from helping his people because we, his people, have done horrible, terrible, treacherous things against him, profaning, blaspheming his name, his covenant, all these years, centuries. And that for us, presently, here and now, choosing to be his people, Har Zion, Mount Zion, is actually one who, as a noble Reshman, will actually be noticeably one who keeps his words to do them. Zadi Yod, keep his commandments. Zion, Yod Vav Nun, suffix of a word, one who is actively engaged in the doing of as Yahweh commanded. In which case, the nations that will bring all their efforts against those people, like here in verse 8 of Isaiah 29, he then goes on to say, ponder it and be astonished. They have been utterly blinded. Well, those are the people who choose not to regard the Torah of Yahweh. They were drunk, but not from wine. They staggered, but not from liquor or alcohol, because Yahweh has poured upon you a spirit of deep sleep. He has closed your eyes. He has covered the false is in parentheses. He has covered the prophets and the chiefs, the seers. Now we mentioned earlier about this word for throne is Kaf Samik Aleph, which means covered. And the question is the moon covered with light or covered with dark? The word covering can be either one. But if the moon is a rock that has no light, then it's covered with darkness. But if the moon is a type of an object which projects a type of light like the sun does, then it could be, no, if the moon is naturally dark, you cover it with light. If the moon is naturally light, you cover it with dark. So the question is, what is the nature of the moon? That gets into a whole other thing. It's a black light. There you go.
Black, right.
Black
no,
rock.
It's a black rock.
Black rock.
It has no light of its own. The only thing you can cover it with is light.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm saying, I'm just showing you the nature of the, you might say, the dilemma or the challenge in trying to say what do these words mean. Kaf Samik Aleph is simply translated throne. What's got to do with covering? Well, some thrones were overlaid, plated with gold, or some with upholstery, and the word Kaf Samik Aleph literally means to be covered. So why do they translate it throne? Because the king's throne was plated or covered with upholstery or gold, where other people's weren't.
Of course, when a king sits down in his throne with all his royal robes, he covers the throne with his royalty. He's the one who makes it royal.
Well, we were talking yesterday about that verse in Isaiah, was it 60 verse I forget which verse it was, 61:1, where it says that Isaiah was shown this vision of, says, the Lord high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. And we were talking about how he had this model railroad set, filled the entire room. It was just an incredible layout.
I like that.
Fred's dream. Besides Rolls Royces.
His train filled the temple. Or it's translated, well, the train of his robe, but the word robe isn't there. But in that word, actually, that word that they translate as train or robe, like you said, sit down, and the fabric of his covering, it's actually the word apprentice.
Really?
And one who is supposed to learn how to be like him, and the word to fill is mela and mem lamed aleph, which is completely, and then the word temple is here have the power and capacity to prevail and contain it all. So you could say Yahweh's apprentice, or one who learns Yahweh's ways, his Shem, as one who is taught, trained, domesticated. That's the definition of both the word aleph and the word bet. And to be a good son, like Yeshua, only doing what he sees his father doing, saying what he hears his father saying, he then will be given the capacity to be completely filled by it, actually contain it all, and put it into practice. But it's translated, his train filled the temple.
Close.
Okay, so Yahweh was going to take the prophets, the chiefs, the seers, the wise men, the professors, the pastors, and he's going to put a spirit of deep sleep. That's like a coma, or that's to become intoxicated in a stupor of anesthesia, to just be completely knocked out. That's what the word means in Hebrew, and close their eyes. So we're not blaming anybody, calling anybody bad, wrong, a fool, an idiot. We're just reading the scripture. Yahweh said he's going to do this to the leaders of his people. And then verse 11 of Isaiah 29, to you all the prophecy is like the words of a sealed document which one gives to a literate person saying, please read this. And he says, I can't read it. It's a sealed book. Verse 12, then the document is given to an illiterate person saying, please read this. And he says, I'm not literate. Or it's translated, I can't read this. Or I don't know how to read. And I've made the point before, which we're not going to get into so much, that's other talks we've done. What the illiterate man said was, lo yadati sefer. As a matter of fact, I did a talk. Where is it? I can't remember which letter I assigned that to. Anyway, we did this talk up in Sarnia. Here it is. Made one of these stickers of this petroglyph, and it says Lo Yadati Sefer, and there's a man with some herds of animals and 8 dots because he has 8 animals, and he maybe knows how to count, but it's an ancient petroglyph. It was really found on a rock. I actually had this inscribed in here, and it says, I'm illiterate. I don't know how to read. I heard animals. I don't know how to learn how to read. I can learn how to count, but the whole idea here is that it almost looks like in this guy's eyeballs he's got an aleph and a tav drawn, and this is an artifact. What does this mean? I don't know how to read, but I can look at pictures and I can count. The Paleo-Hebrew letters are pictographs, and they're also numbers for counting. So the interesting thing is, if you don't know how to read, and you look at the Paleo-Hebrew letters, you can interpret exactly what he's saying by looking at the pictures and looking at the numbers they represent. That's the way to read the book. And we just had read previously where he said the way to speak to this people is with an unknown speech and garbled tongue and line by line, commandment by commandment, unintelligibly, but they have to consent to listen. So this is what I call the Smilodon book. Smilodon is actually the word for, the official scientific word for a saber-toothed tiger is a Smilodon. And I have a whole explanation written up about what that picture is. This is the word for bush. Hey, Samik Nun, hey. Nun Samik is a sign, a symbol, a miracle to be lifted up. And what we've done here is appropriated, that's Nam Yahweh, the royal signet, is put these different pictures I've made. The map that we talked about in Kansas City at Shavuot a couple years ago, and each one of these. This is the Alberta picture last year at in June. Spent a month up in
You know which
Alberta,
one my
Canada.
favorite one is?
Where's that one go? El Tira.
Yeah. That's the one you sent to me when I was in the midst of that forest fire.
Well, so here they have this darkened forest here, like it's filled with smoke, and the teeth and fire of El Shaddai, Daniel thrown in the lion's den, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego thrown into the fiery furnace, and Yahweh saved him out of it. His hand covering over and just rescuing him.
That
Says, "Look
really touched me when you sent that, Eric.
Well,
and that was
that-
going on.
that's a picture of you standing there.
so
You know,
awesome, man.
Release your
That was
inner
really
Hebrew
awesome.
man. Anyway, so each one of these pictures that I've done that we've handed out as these little stickers is appropriated to one of the letters. And people have said, well, yeah, but what does this mean? I don't know how to read this. What does this mean? Why is this green? Why is it? What are these words? And it's like, okay, so I just wrote a 133-page book explaining this book, which explains the pictures. And it's all about the Smilodon. But anyway, just to say, if I mentioned the Smilodon booklet, it's 133 pages explaining this that I wrote up that I sent to a few people, which these ended up being, I made a deck of cards, which these are pictures that are in the cards. The last suit of cards are all these. That's why they have these letters on them.
2 videos previously, there we included a link to that 137 pages that you wrote about that, in case anybody's interested and wants to go back and see.
Actually,
that.
it's 133 written. The last 4 pages, I don't know how to use the computer so well, and those are blank pages at the end. You know, if you actually print the thing off, you can write your own notes in the last 4 pages. But there's 133 pages of text. Anyway, and I'll mention why that's significant in just a minute when we get into a few more verses here of Isaiah 29. So in verse 12, he says, the document's given to an illiterate person saying, read this. And he says, I'm illiterate. I don't know how to read. Don't ask me to read this thing. It's beyond me. So I'm going to read what Stones Tanakh says about the next few verses. So this is the main subject of the talk here. Verses 13 through 24. Stones Tanakh translation. The Lord's, I'm just going to read what they wrote. I have a different way of reading the words in Hebrew, but we'll get into that. The Lord said, inasmuch as this people has drawn close. Now he's talking about his people Israel, those people that believe they're his people. Remember, they previously, just a few verses before, they said, Ariel, Ariel, city where David dwelt, Lion of El, Lion of God, oh hey, we're so great, we're the people of David's heritage. And Yahweh says, you'll be to me, Ka Ariel, like, ugly, unseemly. This place is disgusting, and I'm going to sink this flagship. And then the voice will crawl out from the dust like that. This is where I saw this thing in like the show Drain the Oceans, where people are finding by CGI they can scan the ocean floor, print it out, and see every little coin that shows up on the ocean floor. It's just incredible. But that's like every letter of these ancient texts speaking from the dust of buried under the earth of artifacts. Inasmuch as the Lord said, this people has drawn close with its mouth and with its lips has honored me, yet it has distanced its heart from me. Their fear of me is like rote learning of human commands. He's saying, listen, you might go to church, you might go to synagogue or temple or some kind of religious observation, and you're doing the things that your professors and pastors and priests and teachers are telling you he wants, but your heart has no idea who I am or what I asked. That's why we're talking about these words. That's where his heart is expressed. And it's not about, learn Hebrew and then you're good. No, it's Shema, Shomer, and Oseh. That's the 3 words, hear, guard, and then do. That's what he wants. And he says, do not have this resistance in your heart. He says, circumcise your heart. Remove the barrier of your heart so that we can be touching. That's the word for Mashiach. Touching with the communication. Shiach. Shin Yud Het. Therefore, behold, when you see this word therefore, it's the hinge saying because of this, then this. It's an if, then. A, therefore, B, as it were. Because we think that he wants religious observation. He wants us to go to church. He wants us to say, thank you, baby Jesus, on Christmas, and look, Jesus rose from the dead on Easter. If we do that, if we go to church on Christmas and Easter, whew, man, we're good. We can go to heaven when we die. It's not about that. And as we said in the last video, the 2 things that he said he hated was the Asherah poles and the sun idols, both of which were having to do with Christmas and Easter. The blended, got to maybe hold your hand up to keep the, if we get a gust of wind, to keep the wind from blowing in the microphone there. Anyway, he wants our heart. He doesn't want our lip service. There's another verse that we talked about earlier where he said, if you guys are just going to offer sacrifices because you think that I want to eat your animals, smell the smoke of the burning, just make your own dinner. I have nothing to do with you and your sacrifices. Literally, that's what he said. He says, cook it and have it for dinner. I'm out of here. Therefore, behold, verse 14, I will continue to perform. We're going to get back on this and talk about this very specifically in a moment as soon as I'm done reading this. I will continue to perform more wonders against this people. Wonder upon wonder, the wisdom of its wise men will be lost, and the understanding of its sages will become concealed. Okay, this is about 600 BC, more or less, the days of Isaiah. And he says, the wisdom of the wise men will be lost. What was the wisdom of the wise men? Which wise men? The wise men of Israel. And the understanding of its sages. Okay, certain people are gifted to be wise, and to be a sage is to be a scholar, to be a professor, a pastor, a learned one, and one who has insight of how to put things together and see the way it all works. And Yahweh says, listen, I've given you people that can do that, but I'm going to take it away from them. And so somebody will say to the wise man or the sage, hey, who is Yahweh and how should we serve him? And they'll go, I don't remember. Wait a minute, I knew that a generation ago we had guys like Billy Graham and Billy Sunday and Spurgeon and then, other great leaders of the Christian church. It's like, what were they saying? John Wesley and John Calvin and Pope Paul II, and who are the great leaders of the church? They were smart guys. What were they saying? What did they mean? Was it right? What the heck is going on? Somehow we're just going to forget, and the wisdom of our wise men and the understanding of our sages will become mythical foolishness. I mean, we're going to lose the connection. Were they even telling the truth? They were regarded as wise and sage clerics, but maybe they weren't. Maybe what it means that it became lost is, on the one hand, they forgot. Our present scholars have lost the insights that they had, but maybe it'll mean we suddenly realize these guys were a bunch of idiots leading us astray. And so the regard is lost. And it's like, I have no regard of the Pope or the great leaders of the church, John Calvin. I have no regard of them anymore. I have a regard for these words, but who are they leading people astray? Hey, he's going to perform wonders against this people? Yahweh is the enemy, not the devil. Verse 15, woe, this is, remember, Isaiah 29, woe to those who try to hide in depths, to conceal counsel from Yahweh, but the word from can mean of. So somebody's trying to hide Yahweh's word, Yahweh's counsel. That's kind of the job of the Jewish rabbis and the Christian church. The King James Bible, that's under the guise of giving us counsel, they've actually restricted, hidden, and confiscated, and changed, distorted, and pushing us into following the commands of men, as he just said a couple verses earlier. And their deeds are done in darkness. Well, that's kind of like the whole Masonic Illuminati Jesuit. There's some names, and the Tavistock, the Bilderbergs, all these guys that are trying to take over the world right now. This is describing them, the deep state cabal. They say, who sees us and who knows us? We're so sneaky. Shall your contrariness be considered like the potter's clay? He said, here's another mystery. He said, hey, let me give you an analogy. Can a product of a clay vessel that the potter has made and formed, did he say, he didn't make me, or a molded thing say of its molder, he doesn't understand what we're doing. This is what these guys think of Yahuwah. Behold, this is Yahweh speaking, in just a little while, now here's another mystery. In English, we're going to see it in just a moment in Hebrew. In just a little while, the Lebanon, that's north of Israel, the garden land, will become farmland. The Lebanon will become farmland, and the farmland will be considered like the forest. The garden land will be like farmland, and the farmland be like forest. If I hear those words in English, I'm going, what is he talking about? Now, in this Stones Tanakh, there is a rabbinical commentary of verse 18. This says, the Lebanon is a forest with great cedar trees. When God judges people, the haughty will be brought down and the meek elevated. all to their appropriate places. Then those who had been blind and deaf to God's word will see and hear. Okay, I could take that guy's word for it and say, well, that's what he's saying, and then move on. We're going to come back to that, but he says, next, on that day, the deaf will hear the words of a book, and from darkness and blackness, the eyes of blind people will see. How is this going to happen? It's a mystery. It's a mystery. There's something in here. How is it that deaf people can hear the words of a book? How is it that blind people can see? What do you think about that? Put you on the spot all of a sudden. Whoa, John!
Well, I'm struck by the fact that, in verse 11, he asks a learned man, and he says, this book is sealed. He asks the unlearned man, he says, I can't read it. But then he comes down here and he says, those that are deaf will be able to understand it, and the blind will see out of obscurity. He's opening this up to the unlearned, to those who admit, I don't understand.
And how's that going to happen?
To those that are learned, who would claim that they understand everything, it's sealed. It's by his Spirit. It's by him opening their eyes, opening their ears.
Okay, certainly it's by his Spirit, because his Spirit's what closed it, and his Spirit will open it. Sure. But let's just make it a little bit more practical, a little bit human engagement, like, you hurt, ow, hey, the reality of human, how is a blind man going to see the words and a deaf man going to hear the words?
By healing his blindness and his deafness.
Well, let me throw it another way. How does a deaf man intake perception of stuff? Deaf man.
Well, when someone loses a sense, their other senses tend to be heightened.
Okay, so if a deaf man who can't hear, his visual might become heightened. Mm-hmm. What about a blind man who can't see? His ears might become heightened.
Sure.
Okay, so
there's also that verse where Messiah talks about on the Sabbath day, he made the clay and opened the eyes. That's very spiritually significant.
Yeah.
You regard the Sabbath and your eyes will become open.
So something about stuff. If we want to now do some suffering, connecting the dots like a constellation, connecting this verse to this concept, to these words, to this pondering of understanding, to this insight that the Ruach gives, I'm going to suggest, just as a consideration, pictographic Paleo-Hebrew, Nun Samic. Nun is this living spark, which is a meaning. Samic is an engineered structure like the design of letters, the spelling of words. And Hay, Samic Nun Hay, is the word literally the bush. This is a pictograph of the word the bush from Exodus chapter 3 at the burning bush incident. So my proposal is that the first word Hay, which is the, is the message from on high being put into Samic Nun, which then itself expresses or gets into human intelligence. The Samic Nun expressed and received. So what's Samic Nun? An engineered structure. That's the shape of the letters. Pictographs. What's Nun? The meaning of the pictographs. Okay, so every picture tells a story. But every letter is also a phonic, a phonetic, a verbalization. So if you can understand then Yahweh's words, which are both pictures, well, a deaf man can certainly see these pictures. A blind man can hear the sounds and can hear the voice. So something about pictographic verbalization of the phonetic Hebrew, the Semitic language, brings understanding.
That's a Rod Stewart song. Every picture tells the story, don't it?
There you go. Even Rod Stewart is validating the Paleo-Hebrew study.
There it is.
Go. So I'm just saying there's a way to read into this, and I'm using this as an example to say, how do you translate these words? It's one thing to say, where is it? So you use the English to locate, and then you look at the Hebrew, and then you say, well, what is he actually saying? And we're going to do that in a moment. Look at the Paleo-Hebrew, then say, okay, this is what he actually said. He didn't speak in English. He spoke in Hebrew. But now what does he mean? And what does he mean is not just the translation of the words, but it's trying to pull the words into this picture and say, how does the picture speak? So again, the Samic and the Nun, the structure of the sentence like the Samic, but the meaning of the words is the Nun. The life spark is the Nun. So the menorah is the structure, as in Exodus 25, where he said, this is the way you build a menorah. That's the structure like a tree, like this great cedar of Lebanon here. But the meaning of the words is like the light of the menorah. To understand who and what things are is the Samic, but to understand how it speaks, what it means, and the power of it is the Nun. So to have this Nun Samic symbol, which is the we used as the Erectology logo from a few years ago, which is this one here. That's Nun Samic as a logo with all the letters of the alphabet around it. This says Halakha Haderek and Dabar Hashafa, which is to say walk the walk and talk the talk. And then using that same symbol in this one, and Yeshua said, if I be lifted up, the way that Moshe lifted up the serpent in the wilderness. Well, it was a serpentine shape, not necessarily a snake form, but a snake aspect on a structure, a pole. That's a Nun on a Samic. And he said, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men to me. So there's something about exalting the reality of Yeshua being the Mashiach, the Ani, the admiral, the emperor, surrounded by his fleet. And his fleet are the Zavot of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And if he be lifted up as the preeminent center focus, the Ani, the Aleph Nun Yod, the I am of this army of the legions of these forces that are standing positioned for all eternity of reality, the Ahmad, Ayin Mem Dalet, then the reality is seen. Then the essence of who he is, what he meant, what he said, and how we participate as being his navy fits into the whole thing takes on a picture, and everything else that anybody says is meaningless drivel. Back into Isaiah 29 here. The meek will increase their joy in Yahuwah, and the poor among the people will rejoice in the Kadosh One of Israel. It's translated the Holy One of Israel. The meek and the poor are going to survive. It's the meek and the poor that these guys are trying to squish under their thumb and bring down, just so you know. Remember, tomorrow, Easter Sunday, they claim, certain voices are claiming that the New World Order will be implemented. Now, we will wait and see what happens. But we're affecting what happens by talking about Yahuwah and his word and exalting his Shem in all the earth. It says, verse 20, for the fierce man is no more, and the scoffer has ceased to be. I'm projecting that's what's going to happen to these guys. The fierce and the scoffer are going down. And all who strive for iniquity will be cut off. Those who with a word cause man to sin, because they've changed Yahweh's words and given him a false doctrine, and ensnare the one who gives rebuke at the city gate and mislead the righteous with falsehood. Those who would have a heart for following Yahweh, being his people, believing in Jesus as their Savior, have been lied to and deceived by the authorities of their priests, prophets, seers, pastors, professors. We've been lied to by our leaders. And I'm quoting scripture. I'm not making accusations. I'm quoting scripture. The Bible says there will come a day in the future where people will suddenly wake up and say, we've inherited lies from our ancestors. I'm just quoting scripture and saying it's present tense here and now. Therefore, verse 22, thus says Yahuwah, who redeemed Abraham, going all the way back 4,000 years, to the house of Jacob. Jacob will not be ashamed now. Jacob has been ashamed. Well, that's what that has all been about. Ever since Abraham, Jacob has been walking in shame. Well, Abraham was his grandson, but things are going to change. His face will not pale now when he sees his children, my handiwork, in their midst, who will sanctify my name. So this is the critical hinge, the key on which everything pivots. They will sanctify my name, and they will sanctify the Holy One of Jacob, or the Kadosh Yaakov, and revere the God of Israel, the Elohim of Israel. Those of misguided spirit will attain understanding, and complainers will learn instruction. Now, wait a minute. If this is the end of the world, and if the bad guys are taking over with their lies, their deception, their oppression, their tyranny, and another inquisition like what the Spanish Catholics were doing all through the Middle Ages, horribly torturing, butchering, extracting as much blood and cries of pain as that they could from every person, which they predominantly did to the Jews and the Protestants. That's not what this says. This is a whole different scenario. And this isn't the end. This is the beginning of something of an awakening, as it were, but not the awakening of some new age thing. This is the awakening of those of misguided spirit, those who have been lied to, will attain understanding, and complainers will learn Yahuwah's instruction, which means the Torah has to be made bright and clear and glorious of great regard, because the Torah is the only instruction he's talking about. Now,
Verse 24 is the whole purpose of the coming kingdom, so that those that err in spirit will come to understanding. How can Yahweh judge the world if those who have erred in spirit have not reached understanding? You can't judge people who have no understanding. The judgment at the end must follow a kingdom in which these words are fulfilled. They that murmur shall learn instruction. They that err in spirit will come to understanding. It's the purpose of the kingdom.
He also
So-
says elsewhere that when his judgments are in there, the world will learn righteousness.
So the bad guys crashing everything down and covering it over with their heavy hand is not the end of the story. That's an attempt that they're going to do before Yahweh blows their hand off and covers over with his truth and light and understanding.
That's right.
Weren't you talking about a picture of the pillar of fire and pillar of smoke? When the word kafah, like as in Yom Kippur and Kippur, what they wear on their, the Jews wear on their head, it's a covering over of a hand. And when Yahweh had this pillar of cloud, it wasn't just this vertical smoke of a thin thing, but when they camped, it went over their camp and they were completely protected. The word is betzal, betzadi lamed, which means to cover over. It's the covering of a bell or a hat, a sombrero. Yahweh said he'd protect us and cover over us. We have to trust in him. So there's a certain thing about an attitude of confident hope, trust, faith. Therefore, we're faithful to what he said. And in spite of what the bad guys, when I keep saying the bad guys, I mean anybody contradicting Yahweh, tries to make us afraid. Why is it that, like that one picture, Al-Tira, do not be afraid? Why is it that he said, most oftenly repeated in the entire scripture, do not fear? There's something about fear which stirs up a chemical reaction within us, which sets out a certain resonance. They say wolves smell fear. If somebody can make us afraid, our minds are in a certain place, suddenly our body physiologically is in a certain place, we put out certain vibes of energy, frequency, based on or projected by that fear. When Yahweh says, listen to my words, read what I said I'm going to do, and have hope and confidence and trust in me, in my word of who I am. You say, yeah, but look, for all these years you haven't shown up and done anything to help your people. That was because we didn't regard his words. Our forefathers led us into a place of absolute depravity, despair, and devastation. The reason for making these videos and talking about these things is to give us the tool, the weapon, the vehicle of escape, remedy, restoration, and to combat, not just as a shield, but as an active offensive weapon against anything these other people are going to try to do. And it all is based on these words. Just real quick, I'm going to address chapter 30, which is on the heels of 29, and then I'm going to show you something about what's in 29. So we mentioned about how verse 9 and 10 of chapter 30 looks like Hollywood movies. If you get to verse 15, for thus says Yahweh, Adonai Yahweh, the Kadosh, the Holy One of Israel, in stillness and peacefulness will you be saved. Shabbat. No fear. In fact, these Moedim, these festivals, like this week of unleavened bread, is called a Shabbat Shabbaton. That's like the peak, the pinnacle of rest, the ultimate rest. Be very trustful and confident in resting in him. In quiet and in confidence will be your might. There's the secret weapon. Yahweh said, when you project fear and panic, you're done. They'll have the advantage.
It breeds doubt.
It breeds doubt, and when we panic, it sets up this frequency, this energy of distrust, and they can get us. They can conquer us. In peacefulness and in stillness and in quiet and in confidence will be your might. But he goes on to say, but you didn't consent. You wouldn't have it. You said, no, we will flee on a horse. We will run on fast horses. He says, therefore, you will flee. You'll do what you say. Whatever you say is what you get. But when you say, we will run on swift animals, therefore your pursuers will be swifter. Yahweh's going to give our enemies faster horses. It's not about the fast horses. It's not about the big military. It's not about the stealth aircraft or the aircraft carriers or the submarines. It's not about our military. As a matter of fact, there's another verse where he says that Ephraim will say, it's not to the work of our hands that we trust in. We're not going to look to Assyria, who is the great, huge military power. Israel kept looking to Egypt and Assyria. And finally, Ephraim will say, it's not about the military. It's not about the economy. It's about Yahweh our Elohim. And what did he say and what did he mean? It's all about these words. These words that he wrote with his own finger, the 22 letters of Paleo-Hebrew that he wrote with his finger on the tables of stone, are our secret weapon and our shield of both offense and defense. And when we engage his words, Yahuwah will step in. It's exactly what he said, and is exactly where we are, and is exactly what's in front of us will happen. We must regard his words. Sit down on Shabbat and quit working. Keep his moedim. That's the contingency that everything is resting upon. When we do that, he can do what he said. When we don't do what he said, and we fear and doubt and have intrepidation and panic, afraid of what they said they're going to do, they prevail.
That's when you become lion's food.
Yeah.
The game is not the chessboard and saying who makes the next move. The game is a different game. It's a game of rocks, like we said.
We've had this idea that when times get tough, we need to run to the wilderness, run and hide. But in 17, he says, 1,000 will flee at the rebuke of you, till you be left as a beacon on the top of a mountain and an ensign on a hill. He's not asking us to hide and flee in the wilderness. He's telling us,
here's the flag!
Stand on top of the mountain, make yourself known. And he said he'll make them flee before you.
Verse 18, therefore Yahweh will delay in showing you grace, and therefore he will be aloof from showing you mercy when we don't regard what he said. For Yahweh is an Elohim of justice, and when it says praiseworthy are all those who yearn for him, that word yearn is an inner state of picturing an event as happening. The word is Yod Ket Kaf Hey, which literally means to wait, to tarry, and fish with a hook. For example, I've saw, whether it's a cartoon or what somebody said once, there's a guy out fishing, and somebody says, well, have you caught anything? He says, no. I said, well, how long have you been out here? All day. It's like, what are you using for bait? Oh, I don't use bait. Well, how do you expect to catch any fish? He said, I don't like fish. What are you doing? Just like sitting out here and looking at the water in the tree.
That's me.
My brother-in-law loves fishing. You know, I went out with him on a boat up in Montana. Beautiful. Just being on the water. And you're out, you're not on the bridge or on the shore. You're just out in this, a big motor to get you there and a little motor just to kind of creep along through the marshes. He says, I know there's a fish down there because I keep it, every few weeks he comes out there and he says, I know that fish. You know, he catches them, talks to him, throws him back. We'll see you next week. You know, it's like, what? He doesn't like to eat the fish. It's just a way of engaging nature. And it's like, so
well,
what I'm saying.
They say fishing is incessant expectation followed by perpetual disappointment anyway.
Say that again. Incessant
expectation followed by perpetual disappointment.
Well, you know, you could look at this and say we've had a couple thousand years of religious church going.
Yeah.
That kind of fits that description as well.
That's right.
And the reason for doing this is to change that story. So, just real quick, another last thing in 30, if you go to chapter 31, Isaiah 31, Egypt is a man and not God. Their horses are flesh and not spirit. You know, we think of these United States, Great Britain, Spain, France, Germany, Russia, China. Listen, they're humans and their horses are flesh. They're not these spirit, like the orcs that are in, Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. You know, we have a sense of thing. Our enemy is this great mythical, you know, spirit power that we can. It's like, no, those are Hollywood stories. Yahweh will stretch out his hand and the helper will stumble and the helped will fall. They will all perish together. Return, verse 6 of chapter 31. Return to the one, that's Yahuwah, from whom you have profoundly turned away, O children of Israel. He's not talking about the whole world. He's not talking to the unbelievers or the Christians. He's talking to the children of Israel. Verse 8, when Assyria will fall by the sword of one who is not a man, and the sword of one who is not human will devour him. What? Are those giant Nephilim? Are those space aliens? Are those bugs? Viruses? I don't know, but I don't have to fight against these guys with my hand. That statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw, I don't have to outthink the head. It's a statue of the head of gold. I don't need to outfight those arms of silver. It's a statue made of metal. I don't have to outrun the legs of iron of Rome. They can't run. It's a statue. I just have to turn to Yahweh's words. Verse 23, when he sees his children, my handiwork in the midst, who will sanctify my name. That's verse 29. What am I? The wind blew the page, excuse me. One last thing to mention here. 32:17, and then we'll get to chapter 29. The product of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness, quiet and security forever. And the word righteousness, again, means victory, deliverance, and salvation. So he's saying, in quietness and rest, your secret weapon is sit down on Shabbat. The word Shabbat, Shin Bet, means to sit. This day is Shabbat. Depending on what calendar you use, is Shabbat determined by the moon, the lunar Sabbath? Is it determined by the days of the week? Rome had an 8-day week. Do you count that? Do you count the 7? That's another discussion. The concept, sit down in Shabbat. The word Shin Bet means return, to sit, and to dwell. To return to your dwell, to sit on Shabbat, and don't work for that day. And the Moedim, when he says this is a Shabbat Shabbaton, I'm saying, how you do that, talk amongst yourselves. And we have different people on different calendars in different ways, but the point is, at least start by regarding what he said. Now, let's get to Isaiah 29. Do you have anything else to say before I get into that?
No.
Okay, this goes back to, I was talking to a fellow in, I believe he's in Oklahoma. Anyway, we were talking about, okay, doesn't know anything about the Hebrew language. Let's just look at one word. One word came to mind, Vayomer. Vav, Yod, Aleph, Mem, Resh. You're illiterate. You don't know how to read that. Vav, Yod, Aleph, Mem, Resh. What does that mean? Real quick, Vav is the hand that grabs. Yod is a hand. Vav is a nail that attaches. Yod is a hand that grabs. So it's almost like train cars coupling together. It's literally, that's Vav and Yod, to be attached. It's exactly what the pictures look like, exactly what the words mean. Then you have Aleph, the first letter, the ox, that's the prefix letter, I will, I am. So now you have this strong, like an arrow that shoots out of a bow, that you have this intent aimed at a target. So there's this connection to the Aleph of strength shooting out.
Sounds like
Mem,
a train.
sounds like exactly like the locomotive train. That's why we've been showing these locomotives, for these trains for the last few videos. And then you have this Mem, which is this womb, this place of developing and building, gestating, incubating, becoming like an embryo in a womb, like a fish in a pond, an idea in a mind, and Yahweh's word in a heart. And then Resh is
Water in
the
a boiler.
Yeah.
water in the boiler of the steam engine. And then you have Resh, which is the exalted, the honored, like the train going down the track.
Right.
There's these pictures, and that's the word Vayomer. Now, so you could look at just the individual letters, because he said, line by line, instruction by instruction, and commandment by commandment, letter by letter. He grabs a hold connected to the umbilical cord in the Mem of the Aleph source by which to succeed victoriously, Resh. And that word is simply translated, and he said. So if we can listen to what Yahweh said and picture that if we regard what he said as a declaration, that's the other way, because debar is the word to say. There's a few other words that mean to speak, but this one means like this declaration, like the Declaration of Independence. The command of the emperor, without fail, hear, believe, and engage in doing so. Shema, Shomer, and thus say. Well, that's how you translate the word Vayomer. But it's given us in English, and he said.
Close.
Wow.
And then I happen to look in Isaiah 29, verse 13, and it starts with Vayomer. So this sets up, that concept sits up, and now I'm going to read a couple pages here, 3 pages of writing of my translation, and we only have 15 minutes, so I'm going to read through here, but then we're going to talk about this. So I'm just going to read this through, and I'll give a little bit of commentary. And he said, my choice, I determine to take the initiative of putting into comprehension and then putting it into practice, giving learning a purpose, a functional use, which yields a real advantage beyond theory. If I design a hammer and I give you a hammer and you go, oh, what's this? Oh, it's a hammer, it hits things. Oh, okay, great. What do you do with the hammer? You do something with it. To be able to see a recipe and go, oh, well, there's a recipe, here's the formula. It's like, well, go get the ingredients and make a wonderful lemon meringue pie like Rhonda just did. Thank you very much, Fred.
Yes, sir.
Whoa, man, that thing was smoking.
We got a banana cream waiting now.
right.
You know, to put his instructions into use is what this whole thing is all about. That's what this Paleo-Hebrew is. This is not just talking rhetoric of hypothetical doctrines and theories. These are living, useful instructions, tools, and recipes where if we do what he said, it will change the world. And as we hear, ponder within, take on the mind, project the words, and put into action, nobody can stand against Israel. Because this is what Yahuwah's been waiting all these centuries. That little statue of the young man and the woman, what a beautiful thing on that fountain out there we did on the last video. And that's a picture of Yahweh and Israel.
Reminds me of that
What
verse
could be
in Proverbs 30, verse 8 or 9 or something. Spider takes hold with its hands and inhabits the palaces of kings or something like that. Just us little spiders, you know, going to inhabit the kings.
When you
palaces.
get a glimpse of the Mishlei, the
amazing.
Proverbs, the pictures that Yahweh's given us,
Just
it
beautiful, yeah.
invigorates the heart
Yeah.
and flows like that ever-flowing fountain from within. The next word is kaf yod, which is, kaf is this open hand, and the two letters, kaf yod, it's translated thus, then, wherefore, when, because, if, on which case, although, but kaf means like as a prefix letter, yod means my as a suffix, so it means like me, I swear. I swear that this is, so every time you see kaf yod, it's this fulcrum, it's this hinge, but it's also, when this happens, then this, thus, therefore, then, when, while, in which case, then, it's like, okay, in which case what? In which case, vayomer, in which case we believe what he said, take it to heart, and do it, and engage it, and put it into action, then, I swear, Yahweh says, this is what's going to happen, and the next word, oppressive tyranny collides. Oppressive tyranny collides with what? With my hand, with what I said, with each other head to head. Saul had 600 guys, 2 swords, and the men were leaving the army. Samuel was late in showing up, and he says, what do I do? So offer the sacrifice. No, wait for Samuel. No, I got to do it. There was a valley filled with men, perhaps 600,000, perhaps over 1 million. Over 1 million man army, and Saul had 600. 2 swords. They were armed to the teeth. Samuel came in and said, you shouldn't offer the sacrifice, Saul. You just lost your kingdom. But nevertheless, that's where Jonathan went up on the mountain with 1 sword. Saul had the other one. And he said, gosh, there's a whole garrison up here. And, well, if Yahweh gives them into our hand, then that's ours. If not, well, he went up there. Long story short, he conquered the garrison. And this wave of panic rolled down the hill, hit the army that was in the valley, and they all were turned into a frenzy and slaughtered each other. And then Saul was told, now go chase them and take care of the rest of them. Saul went after them, slaughtered the entire army because they had killed themselves off, and Saul was able to pick up and equip his whole army with all their weapons. And it's like, what? Nobody saw that coming. Just like the days of Gideon. It happened more than once.
It's just like the images of the kingdoms coming down in a moment.
Same
Struck at the
picture.
feet, turns the whole thing around.
Oppressive tyranny is going to be on a collision. Then, the people united by this culture. What culture? That's the word Ayin Mem. And it's the people that's, what is the common link that we have? Sitting here. A regard for Yahweh's words. That's the common link of the Ayin Mem. What I said and how I said it, Yahweh speaking, formed in my mouth. Well, that's his language, the ancient Hebrew, which restores health, vibrant with vitality. Where my glory emanates from. Yahweh's glory emanates from his people regarding the words of his mouth. It's not in ritual, it's not in Christmas and Easter, it's not in Sunday, it's not in some gold Vatican where they stole and murdered people across the face of the earth. It's in regarding the words of Yahweh's mouth. Though his heart is far away, unlikely, distantly removed from a different time and culture, I was raised in Christian North America of the 20th century, having nothing to do with anything Jewish or Hebrew or of ancient Israel or anything about this language. So I could say, hey, this is talking about my experience. Financed from me. Well, this means this is Yahweh's plan. Yahweh's going to pull it together, and this is all about him. It's not about the Christians. It's not about the Jews. It's not about the Americans or the Israelis or the British or the Chinese or the Russians or the Germans or the French or anybody else. This is about Yahweh, and it's financed or propagated as his train. He's the locomotive making this thing happen. It comes to pass. I'm saying this word by word through every sentence of this verse. We're still on verse 13. They see the exhibition of my Aleph Tav. They perceive to reverence, to fear me, from the perspective of being one who commands the Torah instruction. Men not having been taught, men whose vital spirit comes alive by such teaching and training. Well, this means we're not just thinking of God, the creator of heaven and earth. We're not thinking of Jesus the Christ who came and died on the cross to save us from our sins. We're thinking, whoa, this is about Yahuwah who gives a command, Zion, and expects us to do it. That's not Christian. That's not Jewish. The Jews want to put up Noahide laws and say, step back from these words. Borscht. It has nothing to do with those guys. It has to do with Yahweh, the commander, the one who gives us this Torah. Verse 14, absolutely thus, here I am. He will cause to cease regarding the paleo hiddenness. Regard to cease the paleo. We're trying to promote the paleo. Well, the word paleo means hidden mystery and secret. So he who, at this time, Yahweh, through the agents of Mountain Air 7 videos and what we're doing with this erectology, he will cause to cease the hiddenness, which means he will expose the reality of the hidden wonders. The unifying...
Kind of like lighting the dark moon.
Lighting the dark...
Covering
Which
it with
calendar
light.
on you on?
Covering it with light.
The unifying factor which gives this people its common cultural connection. And then here's this phrase, wonder of wonders, Pele, Pele. Wonder of wonders, mystery of mysteries, the best of hidden treasures, lost, perish. Wisdom and understanding, my son's secret hiding place. The reality that Yeshua is HaMashiach and that Israel is the same story prototyped as Yeshua's story that's in the Gospels is what's in this alphabet. Oi, the depth, incredible deep study, the profundity of Yahweh. Verse 15, the thing that was hidden from the sages and the counselors is the backbone of wise counsel, understanding the resurrection, ayoning zadi. It happened as a theater of darkness, staged as a contradiction, contrary of doing what he told them. Who then can show us? Who can give us knowledge? Strong-mindedly, eruditely putting explanation on exhibition. That's what this is. That's what this is. That's what these videos are. This is verse 15. Who can show us? Who can give us knowledge of eruditely putting explanation on exhibition so that a deaf man can hear and a blind man can see? It's the Paleo Hebrew words. So I'm reading this verse of Isaiah 29:15 as saying, he's going to break this whole thing open with the understanding of the Paleo Hebrew letters. And the key is that Yeshua is the one hidden in the letters. And if we take that on, it's a metaphor of Mishle about Israel being entombed in this crypt for 2,730 years, coming out and blowing these other guys out of the water. And Yahweh's going to do it. He's going to take them off their high horse chair of domination and saying, hey, I'll give it to my people. That was the prophecy all along that I told Abraham. For the sons of Yaakov. Verse 16, so then you reverse it, turn it around contrary-wise. This is what happened with Yeshua. And then we're going to have to do it. How many minutes do we have?
You got about 6.
6 minutes. So we're going to have to make part 3 of this video of explaining how Yeshua being hidden in the alphabet is the fractal pattern by which to translate this entire thing. So here you've got Aleph, Yeshua coming bet into the world, gimmeling to the Dalet, hey, revealed as a man, who was put to the weapon Zion, put into the tomb, Chet, the round rock rolled in front of it, Kaf Lamed, he will still prevail, but boom, he bottoms out in Mem. But then Nun is jumping out of the Mem, Samik branching out like a tree growing, bearing fruit, Ayin, eating the fruit, Pei, opening up to Zadi, the resurrection, Kuf, ascending, Resh, the exalted one, Sheen, the blazing glory of El Shaddai, Tav, accomplishing the covenant. Well, there's a pattern in here. But it bottoms out at Mem. So Yeshua came into the world to accomplish what? The mystery is in the Mem. So if we read the Aleph Bet, there's something about the Mem status which is why he did this. Now there's theories. Oh, he came to forgive us all of our sins and be the atoning sacrifice. Okay, really? Why didn't he say, hey, listen, if you ate a forbidden fruit in order to bring on the curse, why don't you eat a banana and that'll take away the curse? Oh, hey, that's easy. Why did he have to get crucified and die? There's something else going on. There's another theory that because Yahweh divorced Israel and he can't remarry, because the Torah says a man can't remarry a wife who's been married to somebody else, and Israel went out whoring with other gods of Egypt and Assyria, that he had to come and die. Ha ha, trick the law. Yeshua came as Yahweh in the flesh, come to earth, was killed, entombed, dead, buried, so he could resurrect and say, now I can remarry Israel, and all of a sudden, hey, look at the dead man, now he can remarry the wife. It's like, well, maybe. But what's in the letters? How do we read this alphabet? Why did he come and do? Well, if the alphabet is the script, the answer's got to be embedded in the script. So if we can read the script based on what the letters actually mean, because deaf men should be able to see and blind men should be able to hear, that it's all encoded in this. Hey, Samik, Nun, hey. There's something about the Nun Samik of him being lifted up and then resurrecting at the Zadi, ascending with the Kuf and coming back as Resh. There's something about where's the bottom, the Mem. So the next video here in just a moment, we're going to analyze what that means. Because there's something about that which proves that Yeshua came here for even a greater reason than what the Christians say, or this, what the kind of, you might say, the Messianics say, though those might be valid. But there's something more to it, and the answer is embedded in this Hebrew letter analysis. And it gets into, what was that verse we were reading last night? It was Isaiah 59?
59.
59. So we're going to pull Isaiah 59 into this, because once you read what that says, it's like, what else can this be? What's going on? But the upshot of the whole thing is not just to believe in him, but to say, so what are we supposed to do now? How do we engage this? How do we be soldiers on the front line? How do we be Yahuwah's navy and thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven? How do we do his will, thus bringing in, ushering in, and manifesting his will, his kingdom on the face of the earth? That's in part 3, which will be in just a moment.
After lunch.
Can't we just keep going?
You told Rhonda 1 hour.
Is she ready to go with lunch?
You told her
I've
1
been
hour.
here as long as you have.
Well, we'll see.
You're just getting warmed up anyway.
Momentarily. We'll
Should this
pick up
be
with
this
verse,
much fun? Seriously.
We'll
All
pick
this
up with
Sabbath
verse-
bondage,
Yes, it
it's
should.
just getting tiring. Gosh.